Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions, we discussed about the cardinal approach of marginal utility analysis, including the theory of diminishing marginal utility and the theory of consumer surplus. After that, we started the discussion on indifference curve analysis, which is an ordinal approach where we don't quantify the but we can select combinations of certain goods which give the same satisfaction, and if they are plotted on a graph, that is called as indifference curve. And we have understood some of the basic aspects related to the indifference curve, and if many indifference curves are all plotted on the graph, that is called as indifference map. And we identified some of the relationships between indifference curve and marginal rate of substitution. Now let us continue the discussion with understanding more about indifference curves, about their nature. So what are the properties of indifference curves? There are many properties of indifference curves, but each of them has a reason, each of them has a logic, and why these properties of indifference curve exist. Let us examine that. First property is that the indifference curves slope downward to the right. Once again, in general, they slope downward to the right. Why does that happen? It happens because as we increase the consumption of one commodity, in order to get the same level of satisfaction, automatically we have to decrease the consumption of other commodity. If you don't decrease, then the satisfaction will be higher, it will not be same. That is why, since as we increase the consumption of one commodity, the consumption of other commodity is bound to be reduced. In other words, if one is increasing, the other is bound to reduce. Then naturally, their relationship is inverse. And that is why indifference curves slope downward to the right. And if we just recollect the example that we have taken as a data table, combination A, B, C, D have these combinations of consumption of food and clothing. And if you observe, as the consumption of food is increasing, the consumption of clothing is decreasing. Why is it decreasing? Because we want a combination, each of them should give same satisfaction. For example, if food is 1, clothing is 12. If food is 2, clothing is still 12. Then those two combinations cannot have same satisfaction. The second one will have more satisfaction than the first one. So that cannot be on the indifference curve, first of all. If at all, we are talking about an indifference curve where the satisfaction has to be same. And once we know the rule that more consumption of more number of commodities gives more satisfaction automatically. So because of that rule, when the consumption of one commodity increases, automatically the consumption of other commodity has to decrease. It is a different story. How quickly it will decrease, how will it decrease, that is a secondary thing, but it will decrease. Since it decreases, the indifference curve is sloping downwards from left to right. That is the first characteristic of indifference curve, and the reason is because of inverse relationship between consumption of one commodity and another commodity. That's it. That's what is given here. When we are talking about consumption of one good in the combination is increased, one good is increased, automatically the amount of other good has to be reduced. Amount here means quantity. Don't take it as money. In the indifference curve analysis, we are not talking about money at all. So words can deceive sometimes. Don't take the literal meaning of them. Amount means quantity of one good in the combination is increased, then the quantity of consumption of another good is automatically reduced, because of which the indifference curves slope downward to the right. That is the first characteristics of indifference curve plotted on a graph. Then Another characteristic of indifference curves is they are always convex to the origin. Convex to the origin means if we observe this indifference curve, where is the curve? Is it facing the origin or is it facing away from the origin? That is facing the origin. So this is convex to the origin because this curvature is facing the origin. If it has to be concave, it will be like this because the graph is facing away from the origin if that was the case, but it is not the case with indifference curves generally. Indifference curves will be convex to the origin where the curve is facing the origin, which is this. So that is what is convex to the origin means. Definitely indifference curves are generally convex to the origin. As we can see here also, they are all convex to the origin. But question is, why is that? Why indifference curves are convex to the origin? The reason is simple. In one line we can say because of diminishing rate of marginal rate of substitution. In other words, the diminishing marginal rate of substitution makes the indifference curves always convex to the origin. In our example of food and clothing, what we have taken earlier, what was the marginal rate of substitution? If you remember the numbers here, or you can go back. The marginal rate of substitution in this case was 6, and then it became 2, and then it became 1. So what is happening to the marginal rate of substitution? It is diminishing very clearly. It is diminishing. Because of this, the indifference curves are convex to the origin. We can observe that in a more practical way also. Sir, what if marginal rate of substitution is not diminishing? Then what happens? Let us see that with an example here. This is the first example what we have already taken. This is what we already know. This is the same example which was discussed earlier. For 1 unit of food, clothing was 12, then 2 units of food, clothing was 6, then 3 and 4, 4 and 3. These are the combinations, and marginal rate of substitution was like this: 12 minus 6, 6, 6 minus 4, 2, 4 minus 3, 1. What is happening to the marginal rate of substitution? If you observe, that is diminishing. So how is the shape of the curve here? Look at this curve, which I am highlighting, increasing now. So what is the shape of this curve now? The shape of that curve is convex to the origin. And why did that happen? Because the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing. You don't need to draw the graphs and all, but you can understand the graphs. Why the shape of this graph is like that. So that is the first case which we already know. That is a normal case of indifference curves. Normally that is true. Indifference curves always are convex to the origin. Now the question is, sir, what if the marginal rate of substitution is constant, like in this case? For example, here the marginal rate of substitution in the second case is 3, 3 and 3. Means it is not diminishing, it is not increasing, it is constant. Marginal rate of substitution is constant. Why? Because the combinations are like this: 1 and 12, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, 4 and 3. Of course, here also the consumption of food is increasing by 1 unit, but consumption of clothing is decreasing naturally. It has to, but not by equal amounts, not by different amounts, but it is decreasing by equal amounts. Earlier it was decreasing by different amounts, 6 to 1. Now it is decreasing, but it is decreasing by equal amounts. So what if, this can be a question, what if the marginal rate of substitution is constant? How the indifference curve looks like? Then this curve will be telling us the story of it. So what is highlighted now? So the one which is bigger now, that is what happens when the marginal rate of substitution is equal. What is that? How is that line looking? Is it convex, concave, something like that? No. It is a simple straight line. So we can conclude what now? When the marginal rate of substitution is constant, then automatically the indifference curve is going to be a straight line. When the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing, then the indifference curve is going to be convex to the origin. That is the second scenario. Take another third scenario, this one. The third scenario, how this will be. Let us take this one. So this is the first scenario, which was all in yellow. Second scenario, let us put it in orange. Third scenario, somewhat greenish. So first scenario, what happened? Here, in the first scenario, the marginal rate of substitution was diminishing. Hence, the indifference curve was convex to the origin. That was this indifference curve. Then, in the second scenario, the marginal rate of substitution was constant. There also the indifference curve is going downwards only, but it was a straight line. It is not convex to the origin. Now look at third scenario. In the third scenario, possibility, here also the same. As the consumption of food increases, consumption of clothing decreases. But how quickly it is decreasing? What is the marginal rate of substitution here? Calculate that. So here the marginal rate of substitution will be 12 minus 11, that is 1. Then 11 minus 9, that is 2. 9 minus 5, that is 4. So what is happening here? The marginal rate of substitution is increasing. It will not happen generally. If it happens, we are talking. Generally, the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing. So now what we are looking at is, what if the marginal rate of substitution is constant? Then the indifference curve would have been a straight line. What if the marginal rate of substitution is increasing? Then the indifference curve would have been, now observe this graph, the bigger one now. So how is it? Is it convex to the origin? No, it is concave to the origin. It is facing away from the origin. So that is what happens on the basis of how the marginal rate of substitution is changing. If it is diminishing, which is normal, that is the first case. This case, which is normal case, then the indifference curve is convex to the origin. If it is constant, the marginal rate of substitution, then the indifference curve is a straight line. If it is, which is, it means marginal rate of substitution is increasing, then the indifference curve would have been concave to the origin, which is not going to happen. Normally, the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing. Why is that? Once again, because of diminishing marginal utility. Why would anybody will feel more intensely about consuming one more commodity than the earlier commodity? Generally, that will not happen. So that is why, in general, the indifference curves are always convex to the origin. And why is that? Because of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Very important point. And questions can definitely be expected from that. Why is that? We already have discussed it. Why that happens? Why the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing? Because intensity of want for the goods go on diminishing naturally. That means the value attached to the additional quantity of a commodity always decreases faster. So the diminishing marginal rate of substitution gives a convex shape to the indifference curves. That is common thing. Normally what happens. But theoretically, there are two extreme situations also. One of them we have already discussed. One is generally not going to happen. That is concave to origin. That is only for understanding purposes we discussed. That will not happen. Straight line is possible? Yes, quite possible. But when is that? When two goods are perfect substitutes are to each other, then the indifference curve is a straight line. And when the MRS is constant, that means the marginal rate of substitution is constant. So, extreme situation, if at all goods are perfect substitutes, there we cannot say food and clothing are perfect substitutes. Some two goods, whatever they are, X and Y, if they are perfect substitutes, then the marginal rate of substitution will be constant. Then the indifference curve will be a straight line like this. if, that is, when, only when the goods are perfect substitutes. That can be looked at here. This situation, the third situation, is not going to happen. That is generally against the common consumer behavior. So that is only looked at what if the marginal rate of substitution is not diminishing, what if it is increasing. It would have been concave, just to understand that. But normally it is not concave, it is convex. And when it is convex, normally it is convex, because goods are not perfect substitutes normally. But if they are perfect substitutes, then the indifference curve would have been a straight line like this. So that is the first extreme, we can say. Another extreme is that when the goods are perfectly complementary commodities, then the indifference curve will have two straight lines with a right angle bent which is convex to the origin. In other words, it will be L-shaped. So this can be a question by itself. When will the indifference curve be L-shaped? When the goods are perfect complementary commodities, then the indifference curve will be L-shaped. So in that situation, still it will be convex to the origin, but the shape of the indifference curve will not have a normal curvature or a bend. The bend will be a right angle, and that will generate an L-shaped indifference curve like this. Here we have taken some examples and we took it very easily, and this drawing the graphs is easy because these are linear functions. But here this is not a linear function, this is called as length function, which is not required for us. We don't need to be mathematicians and economists here. So don't enter into the unnecessary thought process of how this L shape will be formed. Yes, it is formed. Yes, it can be explained with this function, which is beyond our scope. So what we just need to remember and understand here is, if the goods are perfect complementary, then the indifference curves will be like this, which is L-shaped indifference curves. That's all. How they are formed, that is not our scope. That is a different mathematical discussion, which is not required at this level. But as far as normal indifference curves are concerned, we can observe them as we observed with some small simple examples. When the marginal rate of substitution is diminishing, they are convex to the origin. When the marginal rate of substitution is constant, in which case they are perfect substitutes, then it is a straight line. Generally, which will not happen, the marginal rate of substitution is increasing. If at all that happens, if at all, then it would have been concave to the origin, which is not possible. Normally, the indifference curves are convex to the origin. And another point only to be noted, not to be tested at this level, is if the goods are perfectly complementary, then the indifference curve would have been L-shaped. L-shaped means it has a right angle between the two lines, like that. That is indifference curve's nature, and the shape of the indifference curve is defined by what now? Defined by the marginal rate of substitution, simply speaking. In case of complementary commodities, how the marginal rate of substitution will be? That is infinite, that is a problem. So it can be either 0 or infinite. So that is undefinable, which requires more mathematical application to derive it, which we don't need to do. What we can easily understand is marginal rate of substitution is diminishing. We observed that. Then the indifference curve was convex. Marginal rate of substitution is constant. We can understand that at this level, where indifference curve was a straight line. If at all, though not possible, marginal rate of substitution is increasing, then we can have a concave shaped indifference curve, which is not quite possible normally because it is against the consumer's psychology. But just for theoretical discussion, that also we have observed. But if the goods are perfectly complementary, the marginal rate of substitution would be either 0 or infinite. Then we cannot actually define it. That will be not possible with a simple linear functions, what we know, with the 2D diagrams. So that is why we don't need to know the derivation of shape of indifference curve related to complementary goods. But yes, what we should definitely remember is it is L-shaped. That we should definitely remember. In case of complementary, perfectly complementary, not just complementary, perfectly complementary goods, then the indifference curve will be what shaped? That we should know, that is L shaped. That's it. That is the shape of indifference curves. And another feature of indifference curves is that they will never intersect each other. It is not possible. It doesn't make sense. Why? Because when we say indifference curve, we are talking about all the points on the curve having the same level of satisfaction. So, if you observe this graph, just to understand, let us say there is this point A, which is there on IC1 also and IC2 also. Is it possible? We are talking about something which is possible? No, we are talking about not, it is not possible. Why we are looking at it? Why it is ridiculous? If there is intersecting indifference curves, so that is why we are looking at it. Not that this graph is a valid graph. Whatever we see is not valid. It is not a valid graph. It will not be valid. We are only proving that it is not valid. Like the concave indifference curve we saw, it is not going to happen. Just we saw that to understand. That's it. Same way here, when there are two indifference curves IC1 and IC2, and there are certain points on those indifference curves A, B, and C. Let us take these 3 points and we can understand why these two cannot intersect at A. First, let us look at point A. What does this mean? What does this point A mean? It means that it gives certain level of satisfaction. That's what it means. And it is there on IC1 also and IC2 also. That means, will A and B give same satisfaction? Answer is yes, because both are on IC1. Does that also mean will A and C give same satisfaction? Yes, because both are on IC2 also. So A and C will give same satisfaction. A and B will give same satisfaction. Then how can C will give more satisfaction than B? Because C is above B. And we know already, if there is one indifference curve above another indifference curve, the upper one gives more satisfaction. So C is a point which is above B, which means C should give more satisfaction than B. But we are saying A and B will give same satisfaction. A and C will give same satisfaction. But C is giving more satisfaction than B, which is mathematically absolutely rubbish. That is why indifference curves cannot intersect with each other. What this graph is telling us, if at all we look at mathematically, is A is equal to B, it says. Also it says A is equal to C, but it says C is greater than B. C is greater than B. How is it possible? When A is equal to B, A is equal to C, then B is also equal to C. How can C be greater than B or B is less than C? Not possible. Both are same. B is less than C or C is greater than B, both are same. But that is not possible, right? So like this is not possible, having an intersection of indifference curves is also not possible. That is why indifference curves can never intersect with each other. So this graph and this possibility is not there. This is wrong. Reason is simple, because this mathematical function is just illogical. Same way, this graph is also just illogical. Two indifference curves cannot intersect with each other. Okay? That is a point to be noted. Okay, now that we say that they are not going to be intersecting with each other, so already we may jump to certain unnecessary conclusions. Are they parallel to each other? Is there a rule like that? We are only saying that they are not going to intersect with each other. That does not mean they are parallel to each other always. That is not necessary. That is not necessary. Not necessarily parallel always. They may be going very closely also sometimes. They may be going very far also sometimes. But they can never intersect with each other. That is not possible. So don't unnecessarily draw assertions or assumptions from one principle by automatically implying another principle with our limited mathematical knowledge. So let us not get into that. That is the point. We just need to understand why two indifference curves cannot intersect with each other. Hopefully we understood that. Also we have to keep that in mind. It is not necessary that they are parallel to each other also. That is not what we are talking about. We are only telling here indifference curves cannot intersect with each other. That's it. To that extent only we have to understand, not beyond that. Why? Already we have discussed that. That is the third characteristic of indifference curves. Then this other one we already know, nothing new here. A higher indifference curve represents a higher level of satisfaction than the lower indifference curve. Naturally, why? Because the number of units which are combined in the combination of a higher indifference curve is more than the number of goods in the lower indifference curve. And we know that any customer will derive more utility from more number of units of goods than the less number of units of goods. That is why higher indifference curve always represents a higher level of satisfaction than the lower indifference curve, which we already know. And another important characteristic here also to notice, the indifference curves will not touch their axis. Ideally, no, they should not. Because the concept of indifference curve itself is about combinations. Imagine if there is an indifference curve which is having its line touching any of the axes, let us say this point or this point. So if this point is there, means the point P, let us say here what is given as point P is there, or let us call this for our purposes point A. Point A is there where the indifference curve is touching y-axis. What does it mean? It means 0 good X is consumed and some P number of good Y are only consumed. How can we call that a combination? 0 of one good and certain number of another good cannot be called as a combination. That's only just one commodity. But that is not the purpose of indifference curves. Indifference curves is about combination of two commodities. We are not talking about just one commodity. When we are talking about combination of two commodities, at least each of the commodity, one commodity at least it has to be consumed. It cannot be 0. So at point A, X is consumed 0. If at all you call this as point B, let us say. Here, Y is consumed at 0. Only X is consumed. Y is not at all consumed. Y is 0. X is some number, whatever it may be. Are we saying that it is not possible? Can a person cannot consume good X only but not good Y? Quite possible. We are not saying that. We are only saying that if he does that, that is not what we call as indifference curve. We are talking about indifference curve means we have to look at indifference curve related data, not all the infinite possible combinations in the world. If we are talking about indifference curve, any point on the indifference curve should indicate a combination of consumption of two commodities but not just one commodity. If the indifference curve touches any of the axis, it represents at that point only one commodity is being consumed and the other commodity is 0, which is not the purpose of indifference curves. That is why we cannot have any indifference curve touching the either of axis, because it is ridiculous to have zero consumption of one commodity and some quantity of consumption of another commodity and still we call it a combination. That cannot be called a combination, that cannot be called an indifference curve. It might be quite possible. People might consume only one commodity, they might not consume other commodity, but that is not coming within the purview of indifference curve. So when we say indifference curve, definitely there should be a combination. That means definitely there should be a positive number associated with the consumption of each commodity in that combination. One of the commodities is on the x-axis and other commodity is on the y-axis, and the quantity of consumption of each commodity is drawn as an indifference curve. So that consumption of any one of those commodities cannot be 0. If it is 0, we don't call it as an indifference curve. That is why when we talk about an indifference curve, it cannot touch either of the axis. That is the point number 5. These are very important characteristics of indifference curve analysis. Definite questions are possible, and reasons why these characteristics hold good is important. Of course, characteristics are important to be remembered, but why it is happening also is equally to be understood in each of these cases. Why indifference curve slopes downwards to the right? Because of the inverse relationship between the consumption of one commodity and another commodity. Why indifference curves are always convex to the origin? Because of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Why indifference curves can never intersect with each other? Because the same point cannot give two different levels of satisfaction. In this case, A is the same point, which is there on both IC1 and IC2. It cannot give different levels of satisfaction, because IC1 is giving C satisfaction and B satisfaction also, which cannot be equated to A. That is not possible. So indifference curves can never intersect with each other. That is the reason. And a higher indifference curve represents always a higher level of satisfaction than the lower indifference curve. Why? Because any particular person will have more satisfaction consuming of more commodities than less commodities. That is why higher indifference curve gives more level of satisfaction. Then why indifference curves will not touch either of the axes? Because if any one of the commodities is consumed zero quantity, it doesn't make sense. Combination means both commodities should be consumed, whatever the number may be, but they should be consumed in some positive number. It cannot be zero. That is why indifference curve cannot touch either of the axes. These are the various characteristics of indifference curve. And once again, I want to remind you, indifference curve was only talking about quantities, not amount, not rupees, not money. Money was never the point in that entire discussion. It was only about quantities and satisfaction derived by consuming some quantity of two types of commodities. That is indifference curve analysis. Now moving on to another extension of the same analysis is budget line. Now we talk about money. Indifference curves is about satisfaction and quantities. Budget line is about money. Normally, when we talk about a higher indifference curve, that will show a higher level of satisfaction than the lower indifference curve. We know that already. So, if at all, just for understanding purposes, we have an indifference map like this, IC1, IC2 and IC3. Which one is giving more satisfaction to the consumer? IC3 than IC2 than IC1. So, a practical question will emerge. Naturally, why the hell we should even think about IC2 and IC1? Directly we can go to IC3 now, because that is giving maximum satisfaction. Consumer, why should he break his head about IC1 and IC2? He will directly go to IC3 and consume, and whatever the commodities of good X and good Y are, good Y are, and he will fantastically get a higher level of satisfaction. He can do that, right? Because he is getting higher satisfaction directly by consuming more quantities of good X and good Y according to IC3. But can he do that practically? No. Why he cannot do that practically? Because of his budget constraints. He might be getting more satisfaction in a higher indifference curve, but he may not be able to afford that. He may not have that much of money to maximize the satisfaction by having more and more goods, by obtaining, because of that, obtaining more and more satisfaction. Everybody wants that. Everybody will try to maximize the satisfaction. Very good. We want to reach to the highest possible indifference curve. Fantastic. And we want to buy more and more goods, and because of which we obtain more and more satisfaction. Super. All are good. Fantastic. But the point is, we are talking about goods, sir. We have to purchase them. They are not just coming to us. Means we have to pay the price for these goods. We have to pay. Then only we can get those goods and consume. Second point is, we have a limited money income with which we can purchase these goods. So, with the budget limitations or the money income limitations, a consumer may not be in a position to reach to the highest possible indifference curve, but he will reach to some indifference curve, whatever is his awqat. According to his affordability, he will reach somewhere. So this budget line is basically telling everybody what is their awqat, what is their position, what is their income level, within which they can purchase and consume the commodities. That's what the budget line talks about and tells. So simple point here is, a consumer's choices are always limited by the budget available to him. And naturally, the budget is the word. We are not talking about central government budget, state government budget. We are talking about a common man, whatever a small person, a consumer's budget, whatever his budget may be, whatever he consumes. Let us say he consumes Q quantity of good X at a price of P. Same way, if he consumes Q quantity of commodity Y at a price of P for Y, Py. So Qx is the quantity of consumption of good X. Px is the price of the good X. QY is the quantity of consumption of good Y, and PY is the price of Y. That's what actually is spending. PX QX means whatever he is spending. You are buying 5 chocolates, each with 10 rupees. That means you are spending 50 rupees. Plus you are buying 5 pens, each with say 20 rupees. You are spending 100 rupees. Total expenditure that you have made is 150 rupees. Imagine if you have 100 rupees only in your pocket, and don't tell me credit cards and all that. That is a separate story. You have only 100 rupees within your pocket. What you have to do? You cannot spend 150 rupees because your budget was only 100 rupees. So either you have to reduce the number of pens that you purchase, or you have to reduce the number of chocolates that you purchase. Though you may require both at the quantities what you anticipated, but you may not be able to really buy them because of your budget constraint. So you end up definitely by purchasing a combination of chocolates and pens within your constraint of 100 rupees budget what you have. Whatever is that combination, that depends upon your choice. But ultimately, the total of PXQX plus PYQY cannot exceed your budget. That is less than or equal to your budget. That is the main constraint we are talking about any person, whoever is spending money in the market. We call them consumer. That's what you can algebraically write it as. So definitely, the total money available to the consumer is B, and that money can be spent on purchasing 2 commodities, let us say a combination of 2 commodities, X and Y. How much he can spend will be determined on the QX, QY and PX and PY. So PX, QX plus PY, QY cannot exceed B. It will be always less than or equal to B. That's what is budget constraint, and this can be explained by a graph. Then, if at all we explain it by a graph, then what we call it as is budget line or price line. Simply, what this budget line shows us, it shows us all the combination of 2 goods which the consumer can buy spending his given money income on the 2 goods at their given prices. We know already what is their prices, that is a fact. We know already how much money is available with the consumer, that is a fact. With the given money, whatever he has, within the given budget, whatever he has, how much of each commodity he can consume with that money is the combination of 2 different commodities. We can check this one with an example, just like earlier. Let us take another example with the combination of 2 commodities, let us say X and Y, or chocolates and pens, as we have already taken, and the price of the chocolate was, as we have already taken, 10 rupees, and price of the pen, as we have already taken, was 20 rupees, and the budget you have, the money available with you is only 100 rupees. This is fact. Price of the chocolate and price of the pens are facts. The money available with you is a fact. So this is 100 rupees which you have to spend on chocolates and pens. Right? What are the combinations which are all possible? Many combinations are possible. So these are just numbers. Don't take them as any important things. Many combinations are possible. We can just check some of them. Let us check just 5 combinations is enough. Different combinations. First combination, let us say, you can buy 10 chocolates and 0 pens. This is possible. Here we are not talking about indifference curves. We are talking about the number of units that you can buy with your budget. So one of them is 0 here, possible here. So 10 chocolates if you buy, it will be sufficing, or it will be fitting in your budget of 100 rupees. There is no problem with that. Or let us say if you buy 5 chocolates, or say 4 chocolates, then you can buy 3 pens, right? 4 chocolates 40 rupees, 3 pens 60 rupees. So total 100 is okay. That is fitting in the budget. You can check that also always, whatever this number of quantities and this plus the quantity multiplied with price, always should be 100. That cannot change. So with that only we can fix these combinations. Don't worry about all these Excel things. It's only for example. So 10 chocolates and 0 pence is one combination, right? Let us take other things before directly going here. Let us say 8 chocolates you want to have. Then how many pens you can have? Only 1 pen you can have. That is possible. But still the total spending is 100. So 8 into 10, 80 rupees, 1 into 20, 20 rupees. So total is 100. So this is another combination. So 10 chocolates, 0 pens, 8 chocolates, 1 pen, right? Or you can take reverse way, 2 pens and 6 chocolates. Still the total spent is 100. Say 3 pens means you can have only 4 chocolates. That means this is still within the total budget of 100. Let us take 0 chocolates just for understanding. Then you can have 5 pens, right? So these are the different combinations that are quite possible. If we draw these combinations as certain number of commodities of good X and good Y are going to be there, they are consumed like this. If we draw them on a graph, how they will look like is this. Like here, for example, 0 of one commodity and these many number of units of another commodity. And as the consumption of one commodity is increasing, naturally the consumption of other commodity is decreasing. So that is what is happening. Consumption of one commodity decreases and the consumption of one commodity increases. That's what is happening here. Why is that? Because the total budget is limited. And that's what we can observe here also. 0 pence, if we purchase, we could have purchased 10 chocolates. With 1 pen, we can purchase only 8 chocolates. With 2 pence, we can purchase only 6 chocolates. With 3 pence, we can purchase only 4. If at all we want to buy 5 pence, we cannot purchase any chocolates. We have to end up in spending 0 chocolates. That happens here. So like this, any two commodities if we observe and whatever the combinations we draw on a graph, different combination of goods is what we are drawing on a graph. That's what gives us this price line or budget line. These are all the goods or combinations of the goods which are within the reach of the consumer, where the consumer can afford to spend any of these combinations. That is okay. All those combinations will lie on this price line or budget line. Okay, so that's how it looks like. But just for understanding purposes, as we are increasing the commodity consumption of one of them, each of them, how does the other commodity look like? Definitely it will be a downward sloping line. Taking this data, we can understand how this line looks like as a general example. So this is how it is going to look like. At one point, this is what it is. And if we take both of them at the same time, then this is how it looks like. So one of them if you take, because one is anyway increasing, the other is decreasing, that will be easier for us to understand. So this is what is price line basically. When one is 0, the other one is 10. When one is 0, the other one is 5. So this will definitely extend up to here. When this is 0, it will be 10. So one by one, as the consumption of one commodity increases, the consumption of other commodity always decreases. And this can be whatever two commodities. In our example, we have taken as chocolates or pens. Like that, any two commodities can be taken like this. Because we did not take one more point here, it was little bent. Let us take that also. That will be much easier so that we can easily understand it. Say here, we can purchase 4 pens and If 4 pence means we can purchase only 2 chocolates. Yes, this is exactly correct. So consumption of pens is increasing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas the consumption of chocolates is decreasing 8, 10, 8, sorry, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. So that's what exactly is price line or budget line with combination of two commodities, and the total of amount spent on each of the commodities will be always less than or equal to the total amount of income that the consumer has. That's what is budget line or price line, we can call it. Simply a straight line going downwards. Okay. Just in this particular figure, let us say there are other points beyond the price line. This point is there, say H point is there, which is outside the price line. What does it indicate? It means the consumer cannot afford that. It is beyond his affordability. That is not within the reach of the consumer, simply speaking. So, any point outside the price line is beyond the budget of the consumer. He cannot spend it. That's not possible. He cannot spend H. He cannot have H point at all in his consumption pattern because he cannot afford it. But can he have K point? Yes, he can. Because it is within the budget line, K is possible. He can do that. That is his choice. You may call him Kanjus, you may call him whatever names, but that is possible. But this is not possible. This is just impossible. H point is not at all possible. Again, don't bring credit cards, loans and all. That is unnecessary deviation from this topic. Simply a person has an income. Within that income, what combination of goods he can spend. That's what we are talking. We are not talking about the entire financial system. He can get a credit card now. He can get a loan. All these things are possible. We also know that. But that is not the discussion point here. Here the point is, he has an income. He wants to spend that income on two commodities. If he does that, what is his awqat? What is his possibilities? He can spend any of these combinations which are on the price line. No problem. These are all possible combinations on the price line. Any of them he can do because he can afford that. What do these combinations tell us? For example, any one point if you take, this point tells us this much of consumption of good Y and this much of consumption of good X. That is what this point tells. So whatever this point may be, the consumption of good X is between O and that point, and consumption of good Y is O and this point. That's all. So that is a point of two quantities of goods which he can afford with the given prices already known, within the given budget already he knows. That is one possibility which he can spend, which he can afford. Same way, there can be another possibility also. Maybe he can spend only these many goods of good Y and these many goods of good X. But definitely one point for sure. In the first point, let us call this just for our understanding purposes as point A here. Point A. In this point, he has more consumption of good Y but less consumption of good X. That is point A. But let us say this point B, which is also on the price line. But what has happened here? He has increased the consumption of good X but decreased the consumption of good Y because the entire budget, what he can spend is still the same. So once he increases the quantity of consumption of one commodity, he has to decrease the consumption of other commodity because his budget is constrained. That's what is depicted by the budget line or price line, which tells us on the point the consumer can have any combination of two commodities within his budget, which are exactly matching with his budget. Beyond his budget, for example, in this case, point H, he cannot spend that because he doesn't have the awqat. He doesn't have the affordability. If the consumer is not willing to spend anything like A and B, he is willing to spend lesser than A and B, something like point K, that is his choice. But that is well within his budget, that is for sure. He still will be left with some more money which he can spend for other purposes. So point K is well within his reach, point H is not within his reach. That's what we should understand. Any point on the price line, definitely he can spend, because that is also part of his budget. That is what he can spend. He can spend, we are talking. He should spend, he will spend, he should not spend, he might not spend. All these things we are not talking about. So the point is, he can spend that much, any point on the price line, that is possible. That is what is price line giving us combinations of two commodities, quantities of two commodities which the consumer can afford to spend. Simply that's what is price line or budget line. Indifference curve was different. That was not talking about money at all. It was about only quantities, where on the indifference curve, any point gives the same satisfaction to the consumer. That is about satisfaction. This is about money. Both are not same, both are different. But now we have to mix them. We will do that. But prior to that, what is the slope of the budget line? This can be a question also by itself. That is Px divided by Py. P means price of X divided by price of Y. When we are talking about two commodities X and Y, and we are drawing a price line or budget line of these two commodities X and Y, then the slope of the budget line is Px divided by Py. And I would like to just remind you one more point also. The slope of indifference curve earlier will be Mux divided by Muy. That's what is the marginal rate of substitution, right? So the slope of indifference curve is Mux divided by Muy, which is the marginal rate of substitution. And the slope of price line or budget line is Px divided by Py. Mux, which is marginal utility of X, and marginal utility of Y, those are talking about utilities, that is satisfaction, we can say. Whereas in case of price line or budget line, we are talking about money, that is price of X divided by price of Y. That is what is called as price ratio. That's what is the slope of budget line. This can be a question by itself directly. What is the slope of budget line? Px divided by Py. That's it. That is about price line or budget line. Now, let us mix these both, the concept of indifference curve and the concept of budget line. If we mix them both, that is where a consumer will reach his equilibrium. That's what we call consumer's equilibrium. When the consumer will reach the equilibrium position, when he will reach the equilibrium position, if you remember, already we have this earlier discussed, but now we are once again proving the same point using a different context. Here also, when the consumer will reach equilibrium, when Mux divided by Muy is equal to Px divided by Py. Mux divided by Muy should be equal to Px divided by Py. That's what the consumer's equilibrium is all about. This is not anything new. Even from a other earlier point of view, with the marginal utility analysis also, the consumer's equilibrium was more or less in the same area, where Mux divided by Muy is equal to Px divided by Py. Should have remembered that. That's what is consumer's equilibrium, right? But that was under the marginal utility analysis we talked about. Still the same, because both are ultimately reaching to the same point. Consumer's equilibrium will be this. When the marginal utility of X is divided by marginal utility of Y is equal to price of X divided by price of Y, then only consumer is said to be at equilibrium. We are not violating that. We are not bringing anything new in that. Same thing once again can be explained by using indifference curve analysis and price line, budget line also. Here also what we are telling, consumer's equilibrium will be when, same time, when Mux divided by Muy is equal to Px divided by Py. But context is different. When it will be equal? It will be equal when, what is Mux divided by Muy? Mux divided by Muy is the slope of indifference curve. In this case, that is the slope of IC3. That is the indifference curve. And what is Px by Py? That is the slope of budget line. In this case, that is also at point Q. So simple point is, when a consumer will be in equilibrium, when the budget line or price line is tangential to the indifference curve. If there is an indifference curve and the consumer's price line or budget line is touching that, tangential to the indifference curve, wherever it is, that is the place where the consumer will be in equilibrium. We'll come to that analysis of consumer equilibrium by taking many indifference curves. But prior to that, we need to understand some of the assumptions. Mostly we know that. First point is, of course, the consumer has a given indifference map. He knows that exactly what are his preferences, what are his various combinations related to goods X and Y. Then only we can talk about this. That means there is a already set indifference map for a consumer. Second assumption is he has a fixed income, that is money income, which he can spend wholly on good X and good Y. Then only this will work. He will save something. We talk about something below his price budget line. No, we are not talking about that. He is going to spend the entire money exclusively on X and Y. Really, anybody going to do that? Is anybody mad like that? No. It's an assumption. If he spends the entire money for X and Y only, then only this works. Or you can say, for the purpose of spending on X and Y, he has a fixed budget. That way you can also say, not necessarily income. Then you can call that budget. That is first point. Another point is here to note that the prices of goods X and Y are fixed. They are not going to change. Then if they are changing, this entire things will also change. So that is not correct. So prices are known already. They are given. We know the prices. That is a fact. Like we already discussed, prices of the goods are facts. The income of the consumer is a fact. The indifference map of a consumer is a fact. These are all already known to us for analyzing the indifference curves and budget line. And all the goods are homogeneous and divisible. That is also another simple assumption, because if they are not divisible, then it will be difficult to have a common point between budget line and indifference curve. So they are divisible and they are homogeneous also. So we are not talking about one commodity with some type of expression and another commodity with completely different type of expression. So when good X is going to be increased, when we are talking about chocolates or pens, the chocolate is homogeneous. We are not talking 10 rupees chocolate one, 5 rupees chocolate another one, again big chocolate, small chocolate. No, all chocolates are same type. All pens are same type. Then only we are talking about two commodities and their combinations within which the consumer is indifferent also and which is within his budget also. That's what is equilibrium simply means. And naturally, the common assumption always, as usual, is consumer acts rationally and maximizes his satisfaction. So these are the assumptions before we understand consumer's equilibrium. But when the consumer's equilibrium can be observed is simply at point Q. And what is the speciality of the point Q? It is the point which is there on the price line also, which is also there on the indifference curve 3 also. So that is the point where the price line is tangential to indifference curve 3. That's where the consumer's equilibrium is lying. In other words, once again, the consumer's equilibrium will be lying here only when at that equilibrium point, MUX divided by MUY will be equal to PX divided by PY. That means the slope of price line and the slope of indifference curve IC3, not all indifference curves. There are many indifference curves here. There will not be many price lines. There will be only one price line. Indifference curves can be many. So, which indifference curve the price line is touching? It is touching IC3. That is where the equilibrium point for a consumer will get generated. That is the exact thing that a consumer will be willing to purchase. Means he will purchase M number of goods of good X, N number of quantity goods of good Y. That is the best purchase for him because it is giving him the highest satisfaction also, and which is within his budget also. Then let us take some questions. Sir, why not he go for this? Somewhere higher indifference curve is there. Fantastic experience he can get, super satisfaction he can get. Why can't he go for that? Answer is simple. He cannot afford that because it is above his budget line. Simple. He cannot afford that. It is above the budget line. It is not fitting with his budget. Same with this also, same with this also. All these things, various points, these are all above his budget line. These all points are above his budget line. He cannot afford them. not possible. So IC3 and IC3 is okay. IC4 and IC5 are not at all possible for him because they are higher. Even on IC3 also, this point or this point are not possible for him because they are also above his budget line. Where his budget is matching with IC3, exactly at Q. That is what he will spend. That is what he will actually consume because it is giving him some same satisfaction like this point also and this point also. But at the same time, it is within his budget. So while he spend more, he will definitely spend exactly for the consumption of Q. Okay. So IC4 and IC5 are completely beyond his budget. That is very clear. Any point on IC5 or IC4 is not possible for him to be spent. It is beyond his budget. That is clear. On IC3 also, only point Q is within his budget. All other points are beyond his budget. So he will not, or he cannot actually afford it. That is one point. Second point. Let us take other points which are already given here. Say R. Is it fitting his budget? Definitely yes. Can he afford it? Definitely yes. But why don't he go for R? Why not? Because it is on IC1 and the satisfaction generated by IC1 is less than IC3. If he can get a Q satisfaction which is higher than R with the same budget, with the same spending, why any stupid person will go to spend R? He will spend Q so that he can get a higher satisfaction as per IC3 than lower satisfaction as per IC1 on which the R is situated. So Q and R are on the same budget line. Spending is same, but satisfaction wise Q gives more satisfaction than R because Q is on IC3, R is on IC1. So naturally he'll go for Q than R. Same logic applied to S also. That is also on the budget line. Very good. But he can spend it or not? Yes, he can. But once again, the logic is, since the satisfaction derived by S is less than Q, spending is same. S and Q are spending same. But satisfaction derived is less in S than Q. Why should he go for S? He will go for Q. So definitely S is also not an option. Same logic applies to T also. Same logic applies to H also. He will not choose any of these points. R, S, T, H. He will not choose. Though they are fitting his budget, he will not choose. Why? Because all these points R, S, T, H are giving him lower satisfaction than Q. But they are spending also same money as Q. So why will he spend the same money for a lower satisfaction? He will not, because he is a rational person. Hence, he will choose Q but not R, S, T, H. All those points. Can he afford? Answer is yes. But will he choose? No. Why? Because satisfaction is less. Can he afford these points? No. Answer is no. Maybe they are giving super satisfaction, fantastic satisfaction than Q, which is good. Everybody would like to have that. Everybody would like to have a Benji car. It will give more satisfaction. But can you afford it is the question. You may not be able to afford it. So it will be there somewhere on the indifference curves, but you will not be able to actually go for it because it is beyond the consumer's purchasing power, we can say. So that is indifference curves and price line, budget line. When they are merged with each other, both concepts, where the price line or budget line is tangential to the indifference curve, that is when the consumer is said to be in equilibrium. That's what are the different combinations of indifference curves here, and we know that already. IC5 gives more satisfaction than 4, that gives than 3, that gives than 2, that gives than 1. So every higher indifference curve gives more satisfaction, but every point on the price line is going to cost the same. Amount that you are going to spend on every point on the price line is going to be same. Like for example, in this, the amount spent on any point on this price line is 100 rupees only. It is not going to be any different. So it is definitely the same amount of money that is spent on R, S, Q, T, H, but it is not the same satisfaction that is derived from R, S, Q, T, H. Q gives more satisfaction than R, S, T, H. Hence, finally, the consumer will be in equilibrium only at point Q, where the budget line is touching the indifference curve 3. That is the concept of consumer's equilibrium using indifference curve analysis. But if you mathematically observe, even the theory of marginal utility analysis also ultimately gave the same logic. When the consumer will be in equilibrium, he will be in equilibrium when marginal utility of one commodity divided by the marginal utility of other commodity is equal to the price of the first commodity divided by price of the other commodity. So that is what is marginal rate of substitution also, which should be equal to price ratio. In other words, we can use this another way. We have two words used already. Marginal rate of substitution is MUX divided by MUY. That's what is marginal rate of substitution. What is price ratio? Price ratio. That is called PX divided by PY. Then what is equilibrium? When these two are equal. That is what is marginal rate of substitution also. That is the same as price ratio also. At equilibrium point, these two things will be equal. That means the slope of the price line and the slope of indifference curve are equal. Which slope of the indifference curve is, or the slope of which indifference curve is matching with the slope of the price line, that is a point of equilibrium. Here the slope of indifference curve 1 is different, 2 is different, 4 is different, 5 is different, but they are all not matching with the slope of price line. Where the slope of the price line is matching with the slope of which indifference curve, it was IC3. So point Q became a consumer's equilibrium point. So this is a very important concept. In the exams, graphs can also be given. You should be able to identify each of them with the same logic what we have understood. Indifference curves, higher indifference curves will higher satisfaction, lower indifference curves will give lower satisfaction. And the amount spent on any point on the budget line or price line is same. When these two things match with each other, that is where we call it as consumer's equilibrium. Clear? That's it. With that, we can conclude this theory of consumer behavior, and things are repeated here many times. Understand this final conclusion is when the marginal rate of substitution is equal to the price ratio, that is where the consumer's equilibrium will arise. That's all. And naturally the indifference curve analysis is superior to the utility analysis. We can definitely argue that because measurability of utility was questionable earlier. Here we don't need to measure it at all. So that was a cardinal approach and this is an ordinal approach. Ordinal approach is better definitely in the case of consumers because satisfaction is something which is not quantifiable. Here the need for quantification itself is not there. So this has eased up the complexities of marginal utility analysis. Second is it can study more than one commodity at a time. If you observe in the case of utility analysis, there was only one commodity at a time which was taken, not two commodities. Here at least two commodities we can take. Once again, we may get a doubt, sir, why only two commodities? Why not three commodities? That is for our limitation. Let us understand that. We are not doing econometrics here. We are not doing any 3D graphs and so many complicated mathematical applications we are not doing. Simply we need a graph means we need only two axes. Means there should be one commodity here, one commodity here. Third commodity introduced, that is beyond our level. So two commodities is enough for understanding the theory. Can it be extended to 22 commodities? Very much yes. By use of technology that can be done, but that is completely outside our scope, much beyond our level. So definitely 2 is better than 1, no doubt. This indifference curve analysis can study more than one commodity at a time. That is an advantage of it. Same way, it does not assume the constancy of the marginal utility of many because it is not required to assume. Whereas in the case of theory of diminishing marginal utility or marginal utility analysis, it was one of the important assumptions. Such assumption is not required here. So we don't need to take some ridiculous assumptions in this analysis. That's a definite improvement from the earlier analysis, that was marginal utility analysis. And also this theory of indifference curves segregates the income effect and substitution effect because Hex and Allen very clearly told how the income effect will impact the demand and substitution effect will impact the demand. These two need not be fixed. Of course, ultimately both of them are going to impact the price only. Price only, yes. Price effect is dominated by substitution effect, sometimes dominated by income effect sometimes. So both need not be just given a common name of price. So these two can be segregated with each other is what one of the benefits of indifference curve analysis is, which we already discussed, the income effect and substitution effect in the theory of demand. Of course, one point for sure we have to notice, both the theory of demand and the consumer behavior are very much related with each other, because demand is something related to consumers that will be definitely affected by the consumer behavior. So consumer behavior theories and the theories of demand are very much interrelated with each other. So one line of thought, Marshall's thought, which is about theory of diminishing marginal utility and consumer surplus, which gave rise to the explanation related to the basic law of demand or demand curve. Another thought that is generally coming from Hicks and Allen, which concentrated on the qualitative aspects of consumer behavior and the theory of demand, which told about income effect and substitution effect in the theory of demand, and indifference curves and budget lines in the theory of consumer behavior. So Marshall's school of thought, Hicks and Allen school of thought, these are the two broad things what we have learned actually at the end of all these two units of chapter 2. Ultimately, these two different dimensions to the theory of consumer behavior and the theory of demand have been understood, hopefully. And with that, we can conclude unit 2 of chapter 2, that is the theory of consumer behavior. And in the next session, we'll discuss some of the MCQs related to this segment. And then we can move on to the unit 3, that is supply. That we'll do in the following sessions. Till that time, read these things carefully, understand them, observe them, try to interpret the graphs well. That is going to be very important in examinations. And if you are facing any difficulty, practice them again and again. That is not going to be a big challenging task. It's a simple 2D graphs that we have. So if you observe it little closely, things will be very easy. On the contrary, if we think that, oh, this is something mathematics, though we are avoiding actual mathematics actually here. If we think that it is complicated because it is showing some x and y and some graphs, then that cannot be understood properly, and exam questions cannot be addressed properly also. So little bit of graphic understanding is required, and that is not going to be at a higher level. It is a very basic interpretation of a two-dimensional graph. That will be definitely helpful in understanding many aspects of business economics. Till now you would have observed that, but you practice more of this now, what happens is the future topics will become easier to understand. It is not the topics that are going to be complicated. It is always the way we interpret them and the way we are developing the capability to understand them. It is not about understanding them. It is about the capability of understanding them. And how that can be developed? 1, by reading again and again. 2, by listening to the video lectures again and again, if required. And if possible, putting the pen on paper and identifying the various points on the graphs. If not drawing the graphs, just at least being able to interpret various points on the graphs will be definitely helpful in this paper to get a better score. Okay. With that, we can conclude today's session, and we'll discuss some of the MCQs related to the topics so far discussed in this chapter in the next session. Till that time, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.